Bonsoir et bienvenue donc à la deuxième conférence du cycle Architecture et Culture organisée en partenariat entre l'architecture, la faculté d'architecture de l'Université de Liège et la Société Libre d'émulation. Ce soir nous avons le plaisir d'accueillir Anne Holtrop avec une conférence qui est intitulée Caves and Temples. Anne Holtrop est un architecte hollandais qui est basé à la fois à Amsterdam, à Milan et à Bahreïn et qui gère un bureau de à peu près 8 personnes. Il n'aimerait pas que je parle d'une interdisciplinarité, mais je crois qu'il est quand même important de comprendre que son œuvre frôle les limites de l'architecture et de l'art contemporain. Il a travaillé, après ses études à l'Académie van Bouwkunst in Amsterdam en 2005, il a travaillé pendant 5 ans avec l'artiste plasticien Krem de Koning aux Pays-Bas. Une collaboration qu'il considère comme une formation supplémentaire à ses études d'architecture et qui lui ont appris que les commandes ne tombent pas du ciel et qu'on peut aussi les créer soi-même et qu'on peut commencer à travailler directement dans un mode artistique. Il a travaillé dans plusieurs pays, entre autres il travaille sur un projet à Bahreïn, il travaille sur un projet à Milan, et donc c'est un architecte qui a à chaque fois cherché la rencontre entre l'art contemporain, la photographie, où il a travaillé ensemble avec Bas Prinsen, le photographe Bas Prinsen, le photographe hollandais. Il a travaillé aussi en tant qu'artiste, où il était artist in residence au Japon en 2009, à Copenhague en 2012, à Séoul en 2011. Et donc cette œuvre s'enrichit grâce à ces différentes collaborations. Et il est aussi enseignant, il enseigne au Zandberg Institute à Amsterdam, qui est la formation de master des beaux-arts. Cette conférence portera donc sur plusieurs projets. Je voudrais remercier aussi pour l'organisation des conférences, non seulement notre partenaire, la Société Libre d'émulation, mais aussi le Théâtre de Liège, le Wallonie-Bruxelles International et aussi notre sponsor Velux qui est en charge de toute la technique des différentes conférences pour cette année académique. Et maintenant, je voudrais donner la parole à Anne Holtrop. Merci.
Thank you, Lisa, for the introduction. You could almost do my lecture, I thought. Sorry, I will speak in English because my French is, well, it's going to be a very long lecture or very short. Depends how you look at it. But you know, if there's any questions on the way, just ask me. What I will do, because currently there are 3 projects under construction. Buildings, large projects. That's for me also a new phase in the studio. I will show you the process of how these buildings are now at the moment. And at the same time I want to give you a kind of conceptual background to how I approach architecture, what my ideas on it, and how I wish to work. Let's see, I never did it in this way, so you can see if it's how it works out, this back and forward thinking. The first slide you see here is an ink blot drawing, one of many that I made when I was doing a residency in Seoul. The year before I was in Japan, and these residencies, they really helped me. Kind of, you go to a place, there is nothing, really nothing. You get a table, a bed, and you have a very big empty space, and you're far away from home, from your environment, from your studio, which I find really exciting because there's a kind of, it's a liberating feeling also. When I was in Seoul, actually I was not really in Seoul, that was also a big mistake. I was in a kind of remote fisherman's village, 3 hours from Seoul, so also the whole context was nothing. I wanted to fill up my space, and I thought, I'm in Asia, let's do ink block drawings. Let's take the Indian ink on the stone, rub it, and then start to make these drawings. So these are drawings that were, also I thought I need to buy the big brush. You know, when you go to the shops, you have these beautiful, beautiful brushes, and I bought myself a really large one. And I dip it in the ink, and the drawings are like they exist in a few seconds, like this. Quickly, I had my studio full with these drawings. And for me, this is important to have material on hand that is there. For me, to have material that is specific, you know, specific in its form, specific in its thing. And for me, that is the start of how I work. Either I make it myself, or I borrow form from where I see it, or form that is bound into material. I will explain that later. For me, that is the start of a work. And this one I start with because it is very similar to a Rorschach inkblot. Hermann Rorschach, the Swiss psychoanalyst, I think begin 20th century, made this inkblot test. You know, it's better known as the butterfly test. You know, it's ink. I think there were 10 of these sheets, ink, folded paper, folded out, and he would show his patients these ink drawings. And on basis of their interpretations of how they would associate what they see in the drawings, he would do his analysis on the patient's psyche. And what I found interesting about it is that the drawing itself, there was also an American psychologist in the 60s, John Exner, said, you know, the whole test is based on misperception. You know, because the only factual answer on what do you see when you see this is you see an inkblot on paper. And there's no other answer that you could give as a factual answer. The rest is either, he said, is a kind of, you do an interpretation. So you can say this is a very badly drawn butterfly. Or the rest is misperception, he said. Basically, you know, you'd start to associate things which are not there, but you kind of you wish to see them. I think this is, and I find this the most interesting part. For me, this is our human tendency to, even if things are completely new to us, we try to interpret, we try to understand what we see. We could do a test also. You know, what do you see here? Bernard, what do you see? An inkblot. You studied too much, Peter, I suppose. Well, no, for me, you know, there's another thing. There's Gerhard Richter is in an interview with Buchloh. There's this DVD, this film on Richter, on how he works, and then on the extras of the DVD is this interview with Buchloh. And Buchloh is this German art historian who writes on Richter already for a long time. And Richter Buchloh starts the interview with, you know, I always thought I understood your work, but I was completely wrong. Richter is up, of course. And then they start talking about how Richter makes his work, and I found this a really, really beautiful way of how to describe you make work. Because Richter says, you know, the first thing you do, you know, he's talking about this oil canvas, this kind of scraped works. He says the first thing you do is intuition, kind of, you know, you have experience of things you have done before, and in this way you do something. There's not really a thought where to go, but you do something on the canvas. So these big brushes and the colors and things on it. And then he says, from that moment on, you have something, and the thing is to invent what is the next step. So what do you do with what is already there? And Buchloh asks, of course, then how do you know when a work is finished? And Richter says, well, it gets more heavy and more heavy to understand what is the next step. And until you don't know anymore the step, the work is finished. And I thought this is a really, really good interpretation of how a process of work could be. And it's one that how I wish to see my own practice, although I'm absolutely not Richter. And it is the opposite of what I sometimes learn you at art school, that you need to know when to stop. kind of, you know, this kind of, which talks all about a kind of mysticism of, you know, the God, you know, like a touch by God. No, you do something and at once you have beauty. No, I think it doesn't work like that. That was not for me. I start with the first work. I did. I said, you know, I show you some projects this evening that are under construction. But for me, I see my work as either there are models, there are temporary buildings, temporary structures, and there are buildings. For me, they are equally important to work on. Although, of course, the building is a much more heavy, longer thing to work on. For me, to work on these different skills, different speeds, is important. And also the relationships between the works. So it's not a project in itself that is a complete, you know, a thing in itself, the solution for that program whatsoever. For me, the thing is that there's a continuation of things that I test in a temporary structure that could be could come back in a building. This is called the Trail House. It was a house I made for the Paviljoens, an art center in Almere, in the Netherlands, in the center, which unfortunately doesn't exist anymore. And Masha Hussing, the director, she asked me to contribute something for the exhibition on a piece of land behind the museum, which was completely vacant land, overgrown, wildly overgrown. And on the land, people made little paths, you know, this kind of chemin de désir, this kind of path, unplanned, by people taking their dog, kids playing there, etc. And I mapped these paths, and I took fragments of this path as possible plans for architecture, because I wanted to do. For me, it's always very clear I want to do architecture at the end. So that's why I don't see myself interdisciplinary. And for me, when it starts to become interesting for architecture, I get also interested. So these forms I start using and interpreting them as a house, because I thought, you know, if these paths are so privately, you know, they're so private, they're kind of made by individuals. I thought in architecture the equivalent is to do the house. And this is the house that is being built at the end. So you have the path, like here from the, let me see, I can point, no? I think so this is just the path, and then you would, from the path, directly walk into the house. There's a small living here, the path continues, and here at the bifurcation you go to the right, you have a little kitchen, you walk on, there's a dining table, a bed, another path that continues, and a very long bathroom with a bath overlooking a third path. And that one, here you see a model of it. Let me see here. This is where the entrance was, the living, kitchen, dining, the sleeping room, and the bath. And here this built. This built really roughly, not only to see the space, some interior elements in it. There was a kitchen in it. There was a table in it. No windows, nothing. That's also why my architect friends, when I was doing these things, they said, well, you're not really an architect because you don't have glass in your windows. And you see here you are in the path, and the path of the thing. And for me, I find this, you know, I never imagined myself a house like this, and I also was not really sure if it could work as a house, because it is very narrow, as you can see. You know, on the smallest width, it's like 70 centimeters, 60 centimeters. But you know, when the path bends, it's a bit more wider. You can place a chair in, you can place a little kitchenette in, and it works. I was really surprised that you could be in such a house. Here you see, this is at the bifurcation of the two paths at the entrance. And also the house worked as a kind of, it framed this land outside. Suddenly this land became also specific, where before it was a kind of, everything was the same. Through these windows and through the placement of the house, these things became something special. I go quickly through this project because they're kind of, to show you what I do and to get to the buildings. This is a project I did at the same time when I was in Japan, in Tokyo. This was my first residency. I started tracing shadows that I took with my camera that I saw on the ground. And the outline of this form is also a trace of a shadow, of some leaves that cast a shadow. And I was asked after Tokyo in the Netherlands to do an exhibition in a tower space, a really small tower in the east of the Netherlands, which is basically only in a glass showcase, 2 by 2 meters. You can only view from the outside. You can view in this tower, this exhibition space. And they asked me to make something in exhibition space to celebrate the space itself, because it existed 50 years as this art space. So I thought I'd make a tower in this tower. So this is the plan of a tower, and this is the model in that exhibition space. And basically, it's the same shape stacked on top of each other. When I made this in paper and I saw this form, it reminded me of the glass skyscraper of Mies. This kind of, the shape goes a bit out and in. And Mies made this tower in a model in real glass to test the reflections of the facade. And I wanted to find a kind of substitute for this glass. So I used mirrorful on the model to get this complexity in the form more, and also to have this hint to Mies. And this is at night, because the space is basically outside, inside outside. So at night it would reflect the sky. Basically the model would more or less disappear. The photos are by Bas Prinsen, as Lisa already mentioned. It's a photographer artist I collaborate with since the beginning. For me it's also really important because you can make a work, but the photograph is, what I really like in Bas' work is that the photo is going back to what is the idea of a work. It's not so much of just a representation or documentation of things, but to get that thing back. Sometimes the photos take also very long to make for Bas because of this reason. So now I go to the first project, which is the museum Fort Verte. It's in the center of the Netherlands. As you saw, I traced forms. Basically, there was all two drawings. The ink blots I also traced as forms, I used as forms the outlines of things. The drill house is the lines of the path that I took as the plan for the house. The tower is with the shadows. And this project is on this Fort Verte. And Fort Verte is one of the biggest fortresses built in the 19th century for the Dutch waterline. A defense system invented by the Dutch to flood the land. Shallow enough so you could not go through with the boat, but deep enough you could not go through with the horses or with the tank, all before the airplane was invented. And on the weak points, basically where there were dikes or where the land was higher than they were not able to flood it, they would make these fortresses to defend these places. And this is around Utrecht, which is Utrecht is a little bit on the hill. We don't really have mountains in the Netherlands, but it's a little bit on the hill. And to defend that place. The whole area, it's like 85 kilometers long, will become an UNESCO monument, and therefore they need a museum to explain the history and to give access the history and the physical conditions of it. It's a master plan by Rapp and Rapp and Christian Rapp, together with West 8. And they made a competition for the museum, which is built on the fortress, that I won in 2012, I think. 2011. Oh, it's a bit pixelated, but it will explain it. And this was the location. It was on one of the points of the fortresses. And they gave me a drawing which, unfortunately, is not so good to see now, but the drawing was made 150 years after the fortresses was built. So the landscape eroded. And you had these bodies of earth, you know, to hide and to walk safely behind. But they made a map exactly, a drawing exactly how the landscape now was. There's beautiful lines that are kind of, you know, those eroded lines, the whole perfect geometry was a bit away. Well, as you already know, I kind of favor a kind of more complex line than a geometrical line in the work. It's something I wanted to work with, and it was also something I already was testing in the trail house and in the tower. So what I did, I framed a certain amount of these lines in a kind of rectangle around it. And in this rectangle, I copied lines and traced lines of the landscape itself. And the rectangle is put on the side, under an angle, because this is the existing fortress, and it needed to connect with the new built museum. This was the location given. And I thought, well, if you need to connect it, you need a small thing to connect, and then basically you come in. So I put it on an angle. And here you see the plan of it. And what I did is I copied these lines. So these lines, all the lines as you see them here, are basically the lines of the notations of the landscape, the different heights of the landscape. The building is very simple. You know, this is the fortresses. Here were all the soldiers stationed. You walk in through this. You walk basically underground, because all these fortresses, these buildings are covered by earth. And then you walk into the new museum. There's an entrance, and then you go around like this, which is all exhibition spaces and a cafe. And then here's a small auditorium. And it goes around a large model of the waterline itself. So it's a model of 85 kilometers of waterline, starting with the IJsselmeer, the main, you know, the inner lake in the Netherlands, until the rivers. And you see all the polders and the dikes that are made as a relief in the model that I showed you. This is the competition model. So here you see that these lines of these walls, the outer walls of the courtyard, that continue as inner walls in the building, are corresponding completely with the landscape. Of course, this is a kind of notation how we do it in architecture and landscape, because it does not exist, of course, in these steps. But you will see later on that it still is a kind of, you see a kind of connection between things. This is the model taken out of the landscape model. And the spaces inside, they have different heights because they follow in a way the possibility of the maximum height underneath the landscape. So that was a kind of gift that, you know, that because there was this link, these things appeared. And here you see it now being built. This is a photo of 2 weeks ago. It is a 2,000 square meter building, more or less. These walls are 8 meter high, and you see how how the landscape and the wall that is kind of cut out of the landscape corresponds. Here you see another photo of it. So no photos by Bas, just a kind of rough to show you with my iPhone what is going on. It is completely made on site in a brownish, grey brownish concrete with no dilatations, nothing. So it's completely solid building. which for me was the, as I said, this is the first building I built. I also never built in concrete, I had no experience. Now I know you need a lot of steel in the concrete to make it that stiff, to make it possible to build without dilatations. But I really wanted that because if you see the old fortresses, they're completely made in brick, solid made, walls thick of 1 meter. And I wanted to make something that is in a relationship with it. It doesn't break it, but is in a relationship with the toughness in a way and the directness of the old fortress. Actually, another part. Here the wall looks very thin because this is only the outer shell. The outer shell that continues above the ground and works as a kind of balustrade. Okay, so you can walk here. This is just a landscape. It will be covered with earth again. This is a small patio, and this is the big patio courtyard. As explained, the concrete is pigmented. It is pigmented with iron oxide, with actually quite a lot of yellow in, which is as a pigment really not strong. So it has 8% of pigment in it to give it a color. Because I wanted to give it a color that is not super strong. It's not a red or a kind of a direct color, but a color that has a certain subtlety. And because of the form, the light is constantly different on it. So you have shadow parts, you have sonic parts, and the color therefore changes. So when the building appears, it is from pinkish to blue to yellow to red in the sun, or in the shadow, or how the light falls on it. And how I work on it is in models. So these are models, plaster models of testing parts of the building. And you see also, you see also well that the courtyard floor is basically the floor from the inside continues outside, the concrete floor, and in that there's a relief that shows the model. It will contain, these are the rivers. The rivers are like, sometimes they're width like this, 50 centimeters deep. So you can really, kids could swim in them, or get drowned. Maybe. No, but it is a kind of, the thing is that also the model has the toughness of this inundation of the flooding, of the landscape. It is not something you can look at and kind of try to understand what happened 150 years ago, but something that is still very physical. And so in these rivers and also in the lake, there's constantly water. Visitors can open locks, they can unscrew locks, and they flood the model, which makes then one part inaccessible from the other part of the building, or you get wet feet. And it goes with, I think there's like 30,000 liters of water to flood the model at once. And the whole thing is 25 minutes. It floods completely, and then if visitors lock close the locks again, it automatically pumps the water out, and you can do the process again. This is the same model on the inside. The floor will be a little bit polished concrete, but all in the same brownish grayish concrete. And this is the consequence of an ID, is that to make this project and I was insisting that we exactly use the lines as I traced them from the landscape. This was for me, I told in the competition, I told this is the idea, this is what I think we should do. So if you choose for it, we completely are going to do it. And I luckily have a client that is fond of architecture, that also wants to do it and wants to have this consequence, because the consequences are really a lot. For instance, all the mold work is different. Every curve, there's we didn't change the curves to make molds that we could reuse molds. So every mold is made differently to make these walls possible. And that means also for the reinforcement is that the steel in it, which is also a lot of steel, they use more or less like 220 kilos of steel, which is, an average concrete wall is like 80. To make this, make it possible to make it really solid without the dilatations. But it means you get iron that is like 60 millimeters, which you cannot just put in the mold because everything is curved. So every reinforcement, all the steel is being pre-curved before it got into the wall. It's not to kind of have a kind of macho talk on the engineering of the project, but it is more that I really am fond of, you do something, you make a step, and then it has a lot of consequences, and that I'm really interested in. So I try to explain with Richter, you do something, you confront yourself with something, and then you have to invent how to go, how to go, if possible, how to get to work with it. And there's of course many possibilities you can decide. You can go one way or the other way. When I had the drawing, it did not necessarily need to be in concrete. It could be in anything, basically. For me, concrete was the way, for me, the step I wanted to go. You see, this is last year, I think a year ago, construction. The construction took a lot more time than was expected. And here you see it's all kind of iPhone photos, so the colors completely shift all the time. But here you see that also with the window frames, the glass, everything follows the curve of the walls. And the window frames are covered in brass, in patinated brass. And here you see a part of the model. And there the dikes, the polders, the different levels of the polders. These are very shallow floor levels. And here you have deeper polders. And then at places, I think here, for instance, there will be a lock. You open it, and then part of it. There are 9 locks to kind of completely float. You see another part. And we I made the fortresses and the cities, the old cities of Muiden, of Naarden, of Utrecht. All they are casted in brass and will be placed in the model. In a way, I'm really fond of the project because it combines my love I have for making the model, and a building in one thing. A second project, the museum I do. I said 2011, so it will be opened in May next year. The building will be finished end of January, but then an exhibition designer is going to do this thing in it. So it takes 4 and a half years, let's say, to make it. The same project I do, the same size of project, I do in 1 year for the expo in Milan. It is completely crazy project in the sense of time. It is the pavilion for Bahrain. For the Adult Expo in Milan that opens also the 1st of May in 2015. And Bahrain I did not know of. Now I live there, but when this project started, I never heard of this place. It is a really small little island next to Qatar. It's connected with a bridge to Saudi Arabia. It has 1.2 million inhabitants. Half of it is, migrants, exports, from Indian, Pakistan workers to me, to people from the surrounding countries. It's a really kind of strange mix of people there. It's very liberal. You drink alcohol, you don't need to be filled. You can walk around freely. And it is really an island. You have an island feeling. This kind of strange places where you go. Everyone's stranded on this piece of land, which makes it, which for me makes it as a fascinating place. So for a place that I really did not know, and the idea of to work with a drawing or something, a notation, I made something which is not anymore traced or found or whatsoever. I just made a drawing purely geometrically. I'm also quite a fan of Ellsworth Kelly's work. This kind of, you know, that you can bring things back to straight lines and arcs. So here's a drawing that is only based on arc segments and straight lines. Until I thought, no, now there's a certain amount of lines, kind of combination of forms that I find interesting. Because if you don't know a place, I thought I need to have a kind of specific glasses how to enter such a place. That I can, because if I start studying what is there, I will, drown in all the information that I get to me, and how do I decide? So I made for myself first a position, which is this drawing. And then with this drawing, I started looking at what is there, at the history, at the present situation. There are just some examples. But here you see the canats. Canats are this underground irrigation waterline system to irrigate the place. And I started just very formal resemblances between the drawing and what is there. This is a map of the Persian Sea and a freshwater spring in Bahrain. An interesting thing is, it's like with Rorschach, you can basically start to associate a lot of things. But for me, it was it is a fun way to do it in that way. Not try to represent, because this World Expo is all about representing a place, not to represent kind of what already is there, but have a kind of make it possible to have a new reading of the thing. So the drawing helps to reread what is actually there, but because the drawing is not made to fit as a representation, it also opens the possibility to see things anew. And then during this research, I came to this little temple by the water goddess of the Dilmun culture. And the Dilmun culture is a culture that 3,000 years before Christ, 2,500 years, was there in Bahrain. Also, in certain texts, Bahrain is referred to as the Gardens of Eden. It's a very green place. And when I saw this, and I saw this kind of forms, this kind of rectangular forms of different sizes, arcs, I understood that with this drawing I could also directly build as elements. So this is a model of the building, how it is being built now. So this drawing I use literally to make the building elements of the project. So they're all, the project will be all made in concrete, but in prefabricated concrete, in a white concrete, a white that is made naturally, no pigments this time, but it's made with Carrara stone, aggregate Carrara marble sand, and white cement. Which sounds completely exclusive, but when you are in Italy, these are the waste products of the quarries. So basically it's really cheap. It's not more expensive than, or hardly not, the white cement is a bit more expensive than standard cement, but that's it. So basically you make prefab standard concrete, but then in white. That's what you can do in Italy. And also the craftsmanship in Italy is incredibly high. It's really beautiful. It's a shame there's so much bureaucracy, but what the craftsman can make there is incredible. I find it really incredible. Well, at least in the Netherlands I never saw it at that level. So to get back to the project, it's the elements, or the drawing basically indicates the floor elements, the elements for the lines that are being extruded as walls, and the roof elements, which are more or less the same as the floor elements. This is the model of the competition model of the total project. And then when I had this idea, and there was this question to make a garden in this project. It was a question by the client. For that I asked Anouk Vogel, a landscape architect, originally from Switzerland but based in Amsterdam. And we worked together on it, and basically when we had this drawing we knew how to build it, kind of, make green what we could see as a garden and make grey as a building. And the gardens will be, in total there are 10 gardens, which will show the 10 fruit trees of, that existed during the Dolmen culture in Bahrain, so 2,500 years ago. And there are really the nice fruit trees in a way. They're the date palms, they're the lemon, they're the mango, the almond, papaya, these trees. And we buy them for the expo in full size, so the date palms, I think the tallest we have is 17 meters. From Alicante, from Rome, from the nurseries, and we plant them there, so they're fruit bearing during the expo. Well, the projector does not really want to help, but you see what is so black are the gardens. And the gardens are, there's 10 gardens, 10 fruit trees, but they're always, per garden, always a mix, where one of the trees is the dominant part. So you see 10 times basically the same kind of garden, but then with the different, different percentages of the trees used. And then in between the building itself is, you enter here, there's a little entrance, a VIP space, an exhibition space. We asked, that's also nice of this project because it's so super fast. The client basically gave me the money and said, decide everything, which is a kind of super question. So because decide on the contractors, the subcontractors, for the exhibition, for the graphic design, etc., etc. So I work in close collaboration with the client, with her on it. But was the kind of complete open question. You could directly choose who you want to work with, which is in architecture very rare possibility. So for the exhibition we asked Armin Linker, Italian filmmaker based in Berlin. He works a lot also with Aglaya Conrad, maybe you know her, she's in Brussels. He will make a film on Bahrain that will be shown here. Then there's a little cafe, and then there is a second exhibition space where we show the archaeology of Bahrain, so the pieces from the Dolmen culture. This is the entrance as in the competition model. And it is a very low building. The envelope at the expo is that you can build on 12 meters height, so basically 3 floors. I think all the pavilions built 12 meters high because they want to make maximum use. So next to it, the buildings will be 12 meters. So I think we are by far the lowest building because we just built 1 floor. It's 3.5 meters high, 100 meters long, and 20 meters in width. But then the trees will all pop out of it. And it's completely walled. So there's only 1 entrance and 1 exit, and that's it. And these are the roof plans. And this is again what I like. You start with a drawing, and I did not imagine that the final forms of the architecture would be like this. It's a kind of what I say consequence, but consequence sounds simple, like you just start an engine and then start doing a thing. But what you can find along working with the thing. And here you see the second part of the building, of the exhibition space, and the part of the cafe. These are the fruit trees I talked about. This is the exit, or the second entrance, a smaller one on the side. And here you see this is the second model we made. It's a 7-meter model where we tested all the pieces of the prefabricated concrete pieces, the elements. There are in total 350 pieces to make it. they're 16 centimeter thickness, so they're very thin. There will be no windows in, there's no insulation. And all the elements are different at the end. So the concrete company did not do it. It looked kind of that it would be a certain kind of repetition, but it was not. So they make every element again. And the building will be after the expo, which I'm really happy with, because the expo is only half a year. It will be shipped completely, including the plants, to Bahrain, and there will be a museum for plants, for fruit trees, as a permanent building. Here you see the model, the 7-meter model where we tested the elements. This I make all in my studio. I prefer to have a quality of control on what you make, so to have it physically in my hands to understand how a piece works, and also to draw. I do not show a lot of drawings now. We draw everything, so we draw also the production drawings that the concrete company directly builds from. So these drawings are in the factory, which is super nice to have this possibility. Well, in the Netherlands, it's not a culture at all that you can do this. They separated the whole thing, the architect and the building process. But for this project, it's completely possible. Here you see part of the drawing. These are the concrete element drawings, and then each element is being drawn again with electrical installations in it, with the reinforcements in it, everything. This is a month ago, I think, when they started assembling the pieces. And you see how we made the 3 centimeter joints between the elements. The drawing appears basically as a joint. And the joint will be filled with a sand cement mortar, 5 centimeters deep. So you really see the joints will really pop out. The walls we made in 2 elements, because there's a part is basement. Let's say 1.20 meter is basement. So the ground in between the gardens is 1.20 meter plants. So the total height is then like a bit more than 4.5 meters. And we cut it in 2, otherwise you cannot transport it on the road. But it gives a nice line in the kind of horizontal line that is on 1 meter high in the space as a kind of plinth. Here they start with the roofs. Here the concrete is really wet, so it is a bit grayish. But, in reality, it's super white. There's a lot of rain, as you saw in the news in Milan. This is of a few days ago. This is the exit, or the smaller entrance. This is a part of the spaces inside. What you see here then will be gardens. So outside, and the gardens are really densely planted. So you have a kind of greenery of things in between these spaces. And the holes in the ceiling are cavities where there will be a LED. Via Bisuno is an Italian company for making lights. Mario Nanni, who was the director of this company before he sold it to Benetton, is also a designer, and he made a LED light that is basically the light itself that you can build into a system that's been built into concrete, and then a transparent bulb that kind of diffuses the light that will be hanging underneath it. It looks like a big old-fashioned light. A bit of the outside. And the roofs, some of the roofs, because there's no glass, there's nothing to close the openings, so you walk from inside to outside. So the roofs I let stick out a bit in places, they kind of gently walk out to make a canopy that the rain does not directly pour in. Also because the roof is also just concrete, so the rain just goes everywhere off the building. And this is the rest of the fixings, the things, the doors, the gates, the roof. All the joints of the roof are covered with brass also to kind of close the joints. It's made all in brass. And this is a part of the entrance gate. Brass you cannot really weld well because there's zinc in the material. So you kind of mechanically try to make things together. And this is Ronchetti, and Ronchetti is a company, a steelworks company in the north of Italy, who has an amazing precision. They work on tens of millimeters. So here you see this is part of the gates that close the entrance and the exits, which is, this part, because you cannot basically not make something to zero, so they let it, step 1 millimeter in the material, and then it is connected with brass screws in depth, and here the same. And this is a part of the fence that will be there. So this is the kind of details that get into the project. I'll show you something else. So you saw the two buildings. Basically, I'm working on 3 buildings. The other one is a souk in Bahrain, but that is really still kind of work in progress. But there the idea is to build completely in nature stone, because I was at Visscher's place, Studio Mumbai in Mumbai in India. And he told me that the marble from the quarries in Rajasthan really costs nothing. He said it's basically cheaper to build with the marble from Rajasthan to do a concrete building in India. And I thought, wow, that's super interesting. And then Bahrain is very closely related to India, to Pakistan. So I thought, well, if you are there, if that is the context, then we can build in stone again. So the building for the souk is to kind of invent again how to build in solid stone, with the folds, with the kind of thing. Which is not so easy, because I found it still, it looks always like an old thing, so we are still working on that. But the idea is to work, to do that project in complete stone. There's something I would like to read out. How much time do we have? I'm running out of time, or no? Sorry. It is Roland Barthes. He wrote on the work of Cy Twombly in this book. It's called The Responsibility of Forms. And I would like to read out something because it gets back to things I said before. Barthes defines the term gesture in this book, in this text on Cy Twombly. I don't know if you know the work of Cy Twombly. Here's one of his works. He defines the term gesture as a surplus of an action. And in action, he writes, is transitive. It seeks only to provoke an object, a result, whereas the gesture is the indeterminate and inexhaustible total of reasons, pulsions, indolescence, which surround the action with an atmosphere. The gesture does not necessarily bear the logic of cause and effect, as an action would do. A gesture is the production of an effect while not searching for one. And Barthes describes the essence of the work of Twombly through the material. His art consists in making things that are seen, not the things he is representing. And Barthes' argument is, we might observe that these gestures, which aim to establish substance as a fact, are all related to dirtying. A paradox. The fact in its purity is best defined by not being clean. Take an ordinary object. It is not its new, virgin state which best accounts for its essence, but its worn, lopsided, soiled, somewhat forsaken condition. The truth of objects is best read in the cast-on. The truth of red is in the smear. The pencil's truth is in the wobbly line. And I find this gesture later on in this magazine by Sophie Dars, we were talking about it earlier. In Hackathon I wrote a text on gesture, and I called it material gesture. And material gesture is something that, the light here is a bit annoying. The material gesture is, for me, that you can work with material that, you know, already in itself you could read the gestures that are bound to it, or that you could use with. You know, material is not something you can make anything with, but material is something that you could possibly read, understand, and within these things let a work appear, let a work make. It's something, you know, I did not think of beforehand, but it's more a thought in retrospect. I show you two works to conclude the lecture that are based on this notion. One is called Batera. It's a collaboration work I do with Bas Prinsen. This is also a photo by Bas when we went to Petra in Jordan to see these grave tombs cut out of the mountains, and then also eroded again in 2,000 years. You know, you have these holes of the openings that are kind of, you know, were in the beginning most likely rectangular, but get the kind of natural shape again. So you see the natural shape of the mountains, the kind of straight cuts, the geometry, and then again over the natural form taking over again, because the stone is really soft over there. And it's really large. This is I think like 6 meters high. So it's an opening. And we were interested in making an architecture that is based on this Petra idea that you do not make something by constructing, by putting elements together, but you make the whole making is based on that you take away material in this process. So what at the end what we did was make a big sandbox. The work consists as a model and later on as a pavilion. I will show you both. But the model, we make a big sandbox. We start digging in the sandbox. We take away the sand. The cavities we poured a plaster in, pigmented plaster, and in a way made a print of the cavities in the sand. As you can see here, kind of, these are the kind of holes, the digging in the sand, and this is the flat side of the pouring side, and the kind of, you know, amorphous surrounding of it, the shape, is by the level of the plaster until it reaches a certain level in the sand. Okay? And then these elements, later on we took away parts, you know, to make a door, to make it straight. If us architects, we then see a wall. I also once gave the lecture completely to non-architects, and they still had to explain that for me this was a wall of architecture with a door. But that's what we made this kind of element, and then we started placing them together in a way to make a modernist house with loose walls, but then in this kind of elements. And here you see photos that Bas took again of the model, where you see the cuts, the doors, the kind of the casted shapes, etc. And these photos we placed again in the model, but at different places. So the model kind of, you know, the assembling of the walls changed according to the space where we show it, and then the photos are different places. And what is really nice about the photos is that when you look at the model, you always look on top of it. You have this God's view on it. The photo completely diminishes this aspect. Then you are suddenly in it. Then it's there. And, so in the model, you jump between these visions. And then last year, for an art exhibition in Wageningen, they asked me to make a pavilion, and I proposed to do this principle of digging, of casting, but then in a large scale, that man-size walls. So I found a contractor that was interested in doing it. He had a piece of land, and we started digging in the land, as you can see here, and then cast these cavities with concrete. It's a concrete, it's a lightweight concrete, a foamed concrete. Basically it's only cement, water and air they put in. Very fluid. And then I put a pigment in because I wanted to make a kind of darker elements out of it. And then this is us, the studio, because at the end, I don't know, but the projects always appear to be much more complex than what we initially think. So then we have to start working all on it. So we start here digging out these walls on the side. And here you see, which was also on the poster, how the walls have been put up. We only made 4 of them, but we assembled them in a kind of space. Here with a door and another element that's sticking in. And I really like also this kind of cuts, that you make these cuts of these forms. And the concrete is, you know, the print is extremely precise. If someone had walked in the sand, you would see the footprints on the thing. You would even see fingers in it, would be casted in the sand, which was completely unsure. We didn't know, because you put like 5 tons of concrete in it. I thought the whole ground would be flattened, but it completely made the print. Here you see, for instance, also this is the form of the digging machine, the bigger digging machine, doing the thing. In a way, I really like it because there's a lot that I did not really decide on, in a way that is made like this. But in a way, it's a way of making. That's what I call this material gesture, kind of way of making that things can appear. And it is, for me, it is like the projects with the drawings are still, you know, you work on the notations of how an architect works. An architect works with the drawing, so he notates, and then you can build a drawing. Where here it's a more one-to-one relationship between the making of something and how then that appears. So it's completely without drawing. You see the windows in it, and there was just a kind of small space you could walk in and out. It quickly became known as the ruin of that city, the ruin of Wageningen, for wedding photos, dog shoots, everything. And I would also like, in a way, is the work that you don't really understand what it is made of, or if it is old or it is new or things. And once I was photographing the work there was a father with his family walking around, and he said, "Ah, it's incredible that a woman made this." The last project I show you quickly is what I did for Maniera Furniture. Maniera is a gallery in Brussels, a new gallery, who asks artists or architects to design furniture, and they asked Office, Kesten and David, and to design the first series. And I made furniture based on the stone collection of Roger Calois. Roger Calois was a surrealist at the time of André Breton, was also a fan of friends with Breton until a certain moment. And they, Calois collected stones, because for him the stones, he collected stones that were not only the material, but also had an image in the stone. For instance, here you have kind of, you know, an English landscape or a Tuscany landscape, cypresses, or more the kind of, you know, desert valley kind of images in it. And he said, you know, that for him, the stones that are millions of years old are kind of, you know, they contain the secret ciphers of the universe. You know, there's a kind of, you could read these stones, the messages are hidden there to work with. For me, this is another aspect of this material gesture. And Marguerite Yourcenar wrote that on this collection of stones, where Collois made a book of, he wrote The Mysticism of Matter, which I find a beautiful way of expressing it. And what I did, I used this, the images of these stones, and I assembled small furniture pieces with it. These I call little shelves, and these are other parts of it. They are assembled of parts of the stones together. And these shelves are hand-painted, marble painted by a school, Van der Kelen, also in Brussels, who teaches this marble painting technique for 150 years now. I thought, because Collois talks about the interpretation of the stone, that you can read the stones, and as I don't have the stones myself, I thought I ask a marble painter to paint again these stones, as again as a kind of interpretation of the material. And the technique of the painting is really, it's a kind of all hand-painted furniture. And she uses the, water-based paint, oil-based paint that breaks, kind of, does not combine well. So all the effects of the, to mimic the stone. Besides the shelves, I made a little desk, a little kind of writing desk. And what I find interesting is, from a distance, it appears as stone. This is the desk hanging. It's really kind of, this kind of little desk. To write deep letters to your loved one, I hope. But when you get close to the thing, you see it is a painting. So this painting, you see the brush strokes, you see the material. And the third piece, this is the largest piece, is a paraffin with a kind of quite an erotic image. I imagine this is in your sleeping room, and then you can undress behind it. There's a little lower part where you can fold the dress over. And then on the other side, it is a black silver mirror. So you look in the way you look in the stone, in the depth of the stone. And there is a little planchette, a little shelf here. And because the two pieces are a bit under an angle, it repeats itself in the mirror. That's it.
Thank you very much. I was wondering maybe if there were any questions from the public.
As usual, a question. I was quite struck that I think the technology with lenses that led to the discovery of the microscope and the telescope were Dutch inventions. And I wonder whether what you try to do with your work is actually sort of an investigation in towards the capacity of architecture to probe vision, to understand, to not only understand seeing and perceiving, but also to help seeing. Is that what your work is about?
No, I try to give a lecture. I try to tell what I do. But when I do work, I do not a lot of thinking. I'm more a person that likes to make, in a way, and that in the making things appear for me. But there is something where I feel good about, or where I feel I have an interest for. And for me, there is that the interest I have in how work develops. That there is this, what I tried to explain in the beginning, that there is form, there is a thing, and I think of what is the, how could I possibly make a building out of this? How could I, what are the steps to take? It is the interpretation, the tryouts to get to a certain point. For me, that makes that the work is open in a way. It's open for interpretation. Because it's the same process as how I did it. And for me, that is the best. I find a project good when it is still has this capacity of that you, as a user or being part of the building, can still have this interpretation on it. It's still open enough for you to project your thoughts on it, to use it in the way you want to use it, etc. So, and that I find really interesting. Umberto Eco wrote also about this this opera aperta, this kind of explicitly want to make the work open for interpretation rather than to narrow down and close down. That's how it is. For me, that is that there is multiple understandings of things, multiple realities of things. I find really interesting, and that's what I do myself in my practice in a way. That when I start working with my collaborators on things, we do not decide anything. There is something, yes, of course, there needs to be something. But then it's we try to find out there. We don't decide at all where we're going to end. There's no goal at all, and it's a kind of journey you go along and you do the things. That I find an exciting process, because it leads you to things that I also did not think of, that there would be, that would be in that way, or it could be possible in such a way, or things. And that I if that could be still in the quality of the work, that if you walk there, you also don't completely, maybe rationally don't understand what it is about, but still, there's a certain atmosphere, a certain condition, a certain specificity that makes you engage with it, but also gives you the freedom to enjoy, interpret, and do these things. I find it a good project. Then I find it a good work. So that is what I do not really know if I answered your question, but that is the kind of, for me, that is the main thing in the work. Yeah.
Thank you. Is there another question?
Benna?
Yeah. I would like to ask you a question related to education.
Mm-hmm.
Since this is also a series which is organized in collaboration with the Faculty of Architecture and Innovation.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of students, there are also a lot of teachers.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, how are you teaching actually?
Yeah.
So how can you teach the spirit and the method and the way of and the vision that you're trying to explore here?
Yeah.
How do you teach this to students?
Well, first of all, myself, I did a rather, my education was at first technical school. Actually, I wanted to become an artist initially, but my father thought it would be better to become an architect. So I started studying architecture. But I did it in a way, I did first technical school, engineering, so I'm a building engineer. Then I did architecture school, and then I was 5 years assistant in the work of an artist, kind of coding. For me, this is the education, so I came from a very strict to a free way. What I teach at the master, so I expect my students to know a bit of things, that they understand, they have this kind of fundament there. Some of my students already did a master, for instance. And I want them to find out what their practice could be about. So I absolutely like what you see sometimes, for instance in Medricio, you see that the students become a copy of the tutor, of the professor, in the best way. Which is a good, because it's a good, they learn a lot, they have a lot of, they can do a lot. Technically they are advanced, they understand what is a good architecture. But what I do with my students, I let them completely free on first hand to kind of explore, fall down, have an enormous crisis also, quite an existential crisis. The first year when they study, there's quite an existential crisis. Everyone doesn't feel well, doesn't feel good, and they don't understand anymore what they want to do, and they blame me that I'm not clear about what I want to do. With them, and they pay for the school, so how, you know, I get all this they say to me, of course, because when you don't feel comfortable, when you get in a bit of a crisis, when you don't know what you really want to do yourself, first, of course, you blame the rest of the world. So we go through this process, but what I find really interesting is it doesn't really matter what you start working on. But if you start doing something, and you are consequent about it, and you really want to understand what it is about, then things can appear. And it is also not a matter of just, you know, freely fooling around and you find something. You need to be extremely precise and understand at the end what you do and why you want to do it that way and not that way, you know, because at the end there's always 100 possibilities in which direction you want to go. But yeah, with my students, so the first year is quite a crisis. At the end of the year, I hope they found something they can connect something with. And then in the second year, because it's a 2-year master, we try to understand what this could be about, what the kind of work, how you position the work, what is the context of this work, and to make a final work out of it. But it's not an architecture school. So I teach at an art school. So my students are you know, I have architect students and also architects teachings there, but it's a mix of things. So I call it, they develop a spatial practice, quite an autonomous practice until a design practice, architect's practice. Yeah.
Other questions? So, yeah.
I'd like to know if your way of working now is the reverse storyline of your education. So you begin to study architecture and then art, and now when you see your architecture, it's like you begin with the second step of your education and this step is the consequence of your first education architecture. So when you learn things of your art education, and now you begin with that and that is the consequence of and the architecture is the consequence of that art things, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but it doesn't work in a certain order. So when you work, all the things happen at the same time. So what you can decide on, the way you understand why you could do something in a certain way, is either you know structurally it will work, or could possibly work. So you talk about reinforcements in concrete at the same time as you try to understand what is keep the conceptual idea of the thing. So you work simultaneously or parallel to these things. For me, to work for the artist or to assist the artist, I needed 5 years to understand that I could just start to make work. That was basically what he learned me. That I don't need the question to do something, but that I could make my work in a way. And that's the Trail House I showed you, the first project. That was not a question. There was no one asking for a house or something else. There was a possibility to make work. You know, a financial possibility also. And at that moment I felt already I felt comfortable in just doing something to follow a certain interest. And in that way initiate work. That is what I think, what really helped me, what Krijn taught me that, you know, kind of, if you're an artist, you are aware that no one is asking for you. No one is asked for what you do. And no one is interested, basically, also in it. So you have to gain your own interest, your own motivations to do things. That I was really happy with, because then it felt really liberating, in a way. But also what I tell my students when they study at my master, I said, if you want to become an architect, you are at the wrong place here. You know, we do a certain part, but you have to see it in a bigger perspective, you know, what you did before and what you're going to do afterwards. That together makes, at the end, what you can do, what are your possibilities, and where you can go. So if you want to become an architect, you also need your architect's diploma or your engineering diploma to do this thing. And I think I'm happy. At the end, I was not really happy when I did the engineering school. I was quite angry at my father that he put me here. But at the end, I'm really happy I did it, because I have also a very practical understanding of things. It's not abracadabra when we talk about steel or concrete or things or structures. I understand also this part of it. And that makes it for me a nice mix to work with. Yeah.
Thanks. Thank you. Yes, no.
As a student, I ask me a question. Do you think that in architecture there is no expensive limit? Because often when we reach the second or the third year of our studies of architecture, the teachers remind us that there is a cost of our project. And
that's how the world works. There's always a cost of things. No, the Bahrain project is, I think, one of the cheapest pavilions in the whole expo. It sounds like, you know, with plenty of trees and everything. It's really reasonably priced. The whole budget is 4.5 million euros for the complete construction of the thing. 2,000 square meters. Including the interior, including the exhibition spaces, everything. It's not not an expensive project. You know, I think China is making their pavilion for 60 million euros. So it's just to, and I'm also, I would not know how to spend 60 million euros on something. You know, at a certain, it is just, I just want to be then within the budget, decide in what you do, to make a decision. So quite quickly we decided not to do windows, not to do doors, and to kind of completely leave things open and make the structure very simple. Yeah, of course this is saves a lot of money on certain aspects of the building. There's no climate installation in it, for instance. It's quite substantial cost saving there. But you know, the projects are very, I think, until in a certain sense, quite reasonable, but it's to choose what is important at the end, and also to have the possibility to choose. That I'm also happy with. That so far the clients give me the freedom to decide how we spend the budget. Also in the museum, the client makes me the supervisor also of the budget, and that is interesting, because you know you have a limit of things how you can spend. So you need to choose what is important for you, what not, and what do you make. And that I think that's, so it's good to have a budget in a way. Makes it reasonable. So when I did architecture school, we did not have budgets. But I was one of my tutors at the academy.
Thank you. Other questions? Then I think I will thank you for this very interesting and also very poetic lecture, I think. So we can, even if there are other questions or other things we want to discuss, we can do that in the cafe of the de théâtre. Vous avez tous reçu un jeton, si tout se passe bien. Vous pouvez échanger ce jeton dans le bar contre une boisson. Hein, voilà. And then I also would like to thank you for coming, and I would like to remind you of the next lecture, which is taking place in February, so that's a long time, but maybe you can already fix it in your agenda. It's February 23rd. We will have Andrea de Plazes from Switzerland coming to give a lecture here. Thank you very much.